Good morning, 605 Speaks. I usually don't have back to back 1 week after the other recordings. I sometimes have gaps, but talked with Carmen just a week ago. And now today I'm going to talk with a new person. And I've kind of cheated. I've labeled this Lawrence County. They don't really live in Lawrence County, but they're very close to it. And their life is heavily overlapped with it. So this is my adding to my list of counties that I've touched with this little project. We're going to definitely talk about snow. I'll warn you that everybody in South Dakota, all we have to talk about is snow. It's another snow day here today. So yeah, look that up if you're not from here. My family in California that watches these, I've never really wanted to visit you guys so much as I do right now. So, but I'm excited to bring on someone with an intriguing identity username here, since we're definitely talking to someone West River. Welcome, Pure Outsider.
Thank you. Thank you.
Which sort of implies that you're in the middle of the state, but you're way on the outside of here.
Yeah.
Way outside of it.
Hmm.
That's like I could put I could change my name to Fargo South. So how is it over there today? You guys have had a better week weather-wise than we have.
It is pretty snowy today.
But you haven't had like this week over here on the east side, we're having like a mega temperature drop. You guys have had more like normal ambient temperature right now, correct? Yeah. I think I'm struggling more with those days where you go outside and you're like, I'm frostbiting. I feel myself frostbiting, and you're fully covered up. So let's talk a little bit about, now I have always made this my plan to know as little about people as I can, but a lot of times I talk to people that I do know something about. I've purposely avoided like reading through anything to learn more. These questions are totally random. And so I get to start completely from scratch with you. I don't even know. Are you a lifelong South Dakotan?
I'm not. I'm from Utah.
Oh my gosh. Well, at least you know snow in Utah. You guys get snow. Yeah. But that's quite a distance and a difference. What drew you to South Dakota? What was our lure?
Yeah, the Air Force. Military.
The Air Force. There we go. I thought for sure you were going to say the Corn Palace, but yeah, military might be a good second to that. So how long have you been a South Dakotan?
Since 2019.
Oh, so all during the life of the pandemic.
Yes.
You don't know us from before.
No.
It's pretty much the same. It's not nothing really new or dramatic has happened in South Dakota in the last 2 years as far as big changes or big lures or draws. A lot of people were drawn here because of the myth of no lockdowns and no bad weather, but we had both of those. So and I'm sure with the military you've experienced that. You guys have your own set of rules anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you kind of live in a down.
Yeah, we did not experience the gnome freedom land that we heard so much about.
Right. You still had to go to work a lot.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Calling into your boss when your boss is the feds is not, they're probably like, whatever, bring a note from your mom. What do you find is the same for you as living in Utah? Are we climatically like a lot different from where you came from in Utah, or are there things that you're like, yep, this is all good for me? Are there things that you came here and you're like, wow, I wish I had experienced this my whole life?
Well, the Black Hills are part of the Rocky Mountains in some ways, so that part is good. I miss the mountains a lot.
Right.
It's the Salt Lake City. We're entirely almost surrounded by mountains in the valley. Mm-hmm. So there's no like wind there. So the wind has been something I've had to get used to.
Yeah. And even our mountain and valley areas experience a lot of wind here because our valleys are not as dramatic as they would be in Utah. Mm-hmm. It's definitely the wind, I'm sure, is something. I think that's something that you don't ever really get used to living here. I've been here my whole life, and I wake up every day deciding, is the wind a ghost or a living entity, because it can be so varied. But what is something that we have that you did not have there besides Taco John's? You did not have Taco John's in Utah. I don't know if you're as much of a fan as I am. What's something we have here that you were startled to come across or that was brand new to you?
Probably not having Mormons here.
Ah, well, yeah, we do have some.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I do. One of my daughter's favorite teachers here in Sioux Falls, and that was a lifelong, I would say, mentor for her through school experience is Mormon. So I know over in Sioux Falls we have a Mormon community, but definitely not like Salt Lake City. Yeah, I don't want to ask, but I'm going to. I don't usually ask people their like faith preference or whatnot, but are you Mormon?
I'm not.
You're not. So
No.
you didn't also have to then experience, so you experienced the loss of it as a cultural thing, but not a personal culture.
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
So I was gonna say that would be a dramatic struggle to move somewhere where there was no one of your same faith. What, when you go back home and visit family or when you talk to people in Utah, because maybe you haven't got to travel a lot being here during pandemic time, when people ask you about South Dakota, what's the one thing that they're so sure South Dakota is like that they're getting wrong?
Probably Christina's persona.
So how is it projected to people from the West of us?
Just being that she's a freedom warrior and didn't lock the state down.
Yeah, and I don't think that that's accurate at the close-up.
No,
it wasn't for me. And I don't know. She's definitely not been stumping for any of the freedoms that I find personally important. So, what was your biggest culture shock when you came here? Then, besides that, there's no Mormons, that would be a culture shock. What was the biggest thing that you had to adapt to as far as the people around you?
It's a good question.
We're pretty redneck.
Yeah, it's very rural here. The slower paced life, any traffic, it's kind of like it's farm equipment or something that's causing the traffic.
Right. Exactly. Because I would say even the left, and I know our politics have talked about liberal extremism and whatnot. Our farthest far left is way too conservative for the rest of the country.
Yes.
Like I would be considered almost conservative elsewhere, and I'm like, what? No, I'm not. I'm wearing blue today. I have blue all over me. What do you mean? But yeah, we're pretty rural. We're pretty conservative. Have you pursued education here? Am I right?
Yes. Yeah, I go to Black Hills State.
So, which is in
Spearfish. Yeah, Lawrence County.
Super beautiful.
Yes.
I mean, that is a super beautiful spot. What do you think of, what's our college town compared to what you would think a college town would be like? I think of that as compared to our other two big universities over on this side. I think of Spearfish as being much more just naturally stunningly beautiful area and an artistic area. Is that what you expected a college town to be like?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm familiar with, and as far as Utah is concerned, and what the college areas are kind of like there as well.
What about amenities? Were you surprised by either the abundance of or the lack of? Everyone describes the same places differently. Like I think of like the Rapid City area and Spearfish even has a Walmart, things like that. But some of our towns don't even have grocery stores and things like that. Do you feel like where you live and work and go to school that everything that you want is in easy reach, or do you feel like we're lacking in anything?
Maybe as far as like maybe transportation's concerned, because going to school up here, it's just very difficult. So
there's no public transportation. There's no broad span transportation across the state. We're not in covered wagons or anything. But boy, you almost have to be a car owner in South Dakota. Is that not what, is that different in Salt Lake City? Could you live in Salt Lake City, do everything you want in public transport all day?
Yes, they have like a track system, and everything about Utah is very like laid out, and like the way they make their roads, it's like a grid, and so it's very easy to travel there. But yeah, they have that part figured out pretty well.
I want that for over here in Sioux Falls. And most of the old part of Sioux Falls is based on grid. The newer parts are circles and cul-de-sacs and weebly wobblies to keep people from driving through your neighborhood. But that also means you cut people off that are in the neighborhood. You're cut off from anything. So I envy that of bigger cities where they're like, yeah, you can catch a bus every hour on the hour and not have to find parking. And yeah, that would be awesome. So the Air Force brought you here. Do you think this is the kind of place that you would stay? Would you have
Yes.
ever? You do. You think you could live a whole life here?
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially, yeah. Do you think you would have ever been brought to an area like this without being brought for specifically employment, Air Force, that kind of thing?
I don't think so. Like before I left, people would ask me when I was fixing to leave that like what's in South Dakota.
Yeah, what's the
Like
draw?
I don't know. I was
Yeah,
Mount
exactly.
Rushmore. I don't know. I don't know much about it.
Right. How much have you got to see of the rest of our state while you've been here?
I've seen quite a bit of Pierre. I've seen a little bit of Sioux Falls and a little bit of Watertown at the Republican convention last summer. So.
And so you're a Republican,
Yeah.
and do you find our Republican Party around here to be of similar mindset and makeup and demographic as what you left from? Or are we a different build?
I would say you're different because the Mormons, they're their entire they have their own agenda.
Yes, I could see, not even in a negative way, but they're not just focused on the community of the state, but their internal community of their persons of their faith. Do you feel like there's more or less politically active women here than there are there?
I would probably say so. I think there's less political activity in general because the Pierre being so not very populated. Whereas like with Salt Lake, the capital is, within reach of the track system, and
it would be easier to, I mean, even if I get a day off here, I can't just jump over to Pier and be there for a session and jump back to watch. I mean, it's an excursion. And especially like with the winter like we have, it's you can't even just zip up to the gas station right now. So yeah, definitely if our capital were either in Rapid or Pier or heck even Aberdeen, I think we'd have a lot more man on the street involvement with things. I think we'd have a lot more public face to the differences of opinion, especially like when you mentioned what the view of our politics are. If you ask somebody in another state what we're like, it's I don't think on the general day to day in most of South Dakota, none of us look like the people that are in Pierre. I always find that interesting. They're there to represent us. I'm like, I don't know how some of them get elected because they're nothing like the people in their neighborhood. They're very not Mr. Rogers.
It's Mr. Koskin.
Yeah, it is. It is. And that is disturbing as all
it is.
Get out. That is. And then what's coming out over here with another part of the Republican Party.
Rocky Hayes, right?
Yes. And it's just like, I will say that there is no group of persons, adults, children, women, minors, with or without income, with or without owning their own home. There is no more group of people that could be victimized and no one would listen in South Dakota than a native. And that's horrible. And Obviously, we know with Mr. Koskin what's the speculation of that involvement is, and then Jones County is in Lower Brule, and yeah, there's so much. It just hurts my heart to think that how easy a predator could plant themselves in a field of victims that can't tell, and that's just. I think that is why I wish that there was more women that could just jaunt over on their lunch break and ring some bells and raise hell. You know, maybe that's my next wave is I'll have to get some mass transport to Pierre. What did you come here planning to kind of stay immersed in the political scene? Were you heavily immersed in a political scene already previously? I know you had mentioned to me once, again, not knowing much about you, but that you started getting involved in Republican Party things as a young person. And so did you come here planning to just stay in touch with that? That's part of what you enjoy and part of what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I wanted to get involved in politics. Actually, in 2016, I supported Bernie Sanders. And I also kind of liked Trump, too. I liked the fact that he didn't take money from super PACs. And I found some similarities between the two, even though a lot of people are like, what? That doesn't make any sense. But
no one looks as good as Bernie Sanders in those mittens. You take that back. I could not see Trump in mittens like that. Take that back.
True.
Yeah. Do you think that when you see how, like on social media locally here, how we all are perceiving different political entities on the national level, are we all perceiving it the same as people in Utah are? Or are we seeing a whole different picture of these? Just like you said, Kristi Noem is a whole different picture far away than she is here. Are we seeing a whole different picture? Are we taking things differently than your part of where you grew up did?
Can you rephrase that?
Yeah, that was a really roundabout question as I said it. Like I personally, I totally see like Bernie Sanders as an example as like a very ordinary like guy that yes wants everybody to have like everything, but in a good way. Like I totally follow that line of thought. Like we have the resources. Why aren't we spreading the resources around more Americans so we can all live better, do better? But then I know here in South Dakota, a lot of and we're a very red state, a lot of the Republican people think that Bernie's not just saying spread the resources around. He's saying take the resources from some of us. They hear him saying take, and I'm hearing him say share. Where you grew up and with what your political history was before you came here, how did you perceive someone like him? Because it's all whatever media we tend to follow. Did you see him as a take or a share?
I saw a little bit of both, especially with what happened with the 2016 primary, with Hillary Clinton and the DNC and colluding against him. And then, of course, he just kind of rolled over. He's like, Hillary Clinton's everything that's wrong with politics. That's why we need to vote for her to save our country from the orange man.
Right. Yes. I do feel like 2016 was definitely a year of people saying pick the lesser evil. And we should have all been more upset that all we had was too evil. Like that we didn't have obviously there's a good guy. I mean, we didn't have an obvious good guy. We didn't have an obvious hero or heroine or whatever to follow. So I think that was lost on both parties. I also have always believed that we should have in every election, there should always be a nonpartisan final option that says, I don't like either choice. I'm electing not to vote for either. And if that becomes the majority vote, then we got to kick them both out and bring new people in.
That's an interesting take.
Because I do know a lot of people in many even just small elections where they're like, well, I didn't like either guy. I just skipped that line. And I do think there was a lot of people that it looks like voter apathy. And we do have a lot of voter apathy, but I do think that you should be able to be counted as, oh no, I showed up to the polls today, but I wasn't going to take a cobra over a rattlesnake.
Yeah.
So, I'm looking for a nice gardener steak that keeps the vermin down, but doesn't bother me. So I do think that that's something that we should, as a nation, pursue, that we should be able to show that, no, I wasn't apathetic, but I wasn't going to take either of you. I think most of the average American people are better than all of our options.
Oh yeah.
So
especially in Pierre.
Yeah. What do you feel? I now I kind of get your name when you say peer outsider. Do you feel like you're part of a totally different party when you're there?
Kind of, yeah.
If you sit on the Republican side, are you going, what? Do you feel like, what do you feel like is really aligned with your beliefs and background? What have you seen that we offer that you're like, yeah, that's where we need to be?
I think there's just too much corruption, and I think that, like, as we've seen with all this pedophilia inside this South Dakota GOP, and then, well, and then the Democrats don't even elect anyone to run against Marty Jackley. So,
yeah, right,
it's like I don't know,
and a lot of
they're part of the problem.
Exactly. Not bringing a dish to the table and yet still getting to eat is not fair. And I think that is a big symbol of how, other than the corruption, the average South Dakotan person that just gets up and goes to work every day and does everything. And that was part of my starting this project, was we're all a lot more alike on the day to day. We all want the same a lot more. And then session happens and we're all like, whoa, in a tizzy for a little bit. And in most cases, I think there's a lot of counties where they're like, we don't need to send two people because the Democrat and the Republican would both be cut from the same cloth. They'd ultimately, on a local level, they would be in the same pocket.
Yeah.
So that's
Denny Sanford's pocket.
Yes, which will I don't think I've ever talked to anybody, and I love that you're not a lifelong South Dakotan, because a lifelong South Dakotan would not have named that many people that have been accused of pedophilia. And I didn't even have to bring it up that I have such an issue with how all these big names, or child porn or pedophilia, and they all know each other. They all have each other's number in their cell phone. Isn't that funny?
I did not kill myself, by the way.
Yes.
Just throwing that out there.
I did not kill myself either. No. I've got some gigs scheduled all the way into July, people. So I'm committed to events at least through July 7th. Just be aware. What do you think is the catalyst for change here? Who or what do we have to do to be better?
I think getting the information out there.
And what information do you think is not making it out to the general public? And is it making it out to is there a certain demographic? I personally think that our 18 to 25s are not, we have done a terrible job of getting the vote out to the 18 to 25s. I know I was raised thinking if I would vote from 18 to 25, it wouldn't even matter. So I don't know that I voted, but I know I didn't check every box because I was like, I don't know who these judges are. I just know I don't want to be in front of them. I mean, I don't think that we are getting the vote out. What other things could be the catalyst for change, for less corruption, more positive influence for our state?
I think like the Dakota Scout and just independent citizen journalism, getting out to Pierre and reporting what's actually happening there. I think
have you met Joe or John from Dakota Scout?
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe's a peach.
Mhm.
I'm always just like, Joe, I'd buy you a coffee, but I don't think you need to be any more hyper, kid. I think it is great though. This last year, we've had an explosion of journalism that wasn't all housed in the Argus Leader walls,
Mhm.
and that was not owned by Gannett, which is Gannett's own doing. They fired everybody. So that's our media definitely lacks diversity, diversity and ownership. Definitely. Is that what do you reach for media? Do you see any print media? Do you subscribe to any print media here in South Dakota?
I do not at the current present time. I'll hopefully eventually get a Dakota Scout subscription. They're probably my favorite paper right now.
Do you do you find yourself still turning to media from that you were familiar with from Utah to get a national view, to kind of peek at how do things really look compared to what I see in the media here?
No, I haven't really been keeping up too much with what's going on in Utah too much, but
Because South Dakota's won you over, you're going to stay here.
yeah.
And we briefly, and I know nothing about your project, but I asked if you had any projects or anything exciting to talk about or promote on a personal level, and that's a good lead in for that. Are you going to stay here because we have such great backdrops for film?
Yes, probably.
And so you're working on one right now. What do you want to tell us about your film adventures?
Yeah, so my film is where I got the idea for the name Pure Outsider. It came to me kind of suddenly, sudden burst of inspiration, as a result of, this conspiracy that I was involved in at the Capitol. And so the film is basically
true facts. You were involved in one, or you're creating a fictional world?
a little bit of both. The movie is based on the true story.
Are you going to be the Dan Brown of South Dakota?
Who's Dan Brown?
He's wrote like Angels and Demons about the conspiracy of whether or not Jesus had a wife, things like that. He believes it's true. And the rest of us are like, whatever, bro. But yeah, so okay, based on true facts, conspiracy and peer. I should go grab my tinfoil hat. I had a tinfoil mask for 2020 as well.
Nice.
Yeah, okay, go on.
Yeah, and so the film's based on that, and kind of the whole plot, Lee Schoenbeck's plot to reshape the state legislature into his own image. And basically the story is how I got involved in that through my boss recruiting me into it.
So well, no wonder they thought you were a spy. Does everybody here ask you if you're a rhino?
No.
No, because I was going to say you probably have enough history of showing that, that you didn't just up and become a Republican today just to get in good with them. What's your background in filmmaking? Have you made other films?
No, I haven't made other films, but I've always been interested in like video editing and making videos and stuff like that. And
do you have a script completely written? Do you have
Yeah, I have the first. I have part 1 done, which is basically Act 1 and the first half of Act 2, and then I still have to finish the end of Act 2 and Act 3.
And do you have fellow people that are, whether or not they're politically interested, they're interested in building a film with you?
Well, it actually was kind of a bit of a solo project, because I was also kind of trying to keep a lid on the fact that I knew about what was going on. So I didn't there wasn't anyone else really involved in the film. So I had to kind of figure out how I was going to basically portray this whole story with only basically one actor for the most part.
Right. So kind of in a way you've turned your probably personal internal journal of the experience into something to share with the public.
Yes.
Are you do you feel like you're doing this in part as catharsis to like line it all up and get it out of your head? Or do you feel like excited to do it as a creative art piece? Or is this something that you feel is almost like in a documentary sense of the world needs to know?
I think all of the above.
All of the above.
Mm.
Did you, were you a person that was a writer before?
Yeah, I've always kind of been a bit of a writer.
That's always been your creative outlet, is writing and whatnot. This type of writing, or more like journaling or fiction or journalism, or?
Yeah, more along those lines. I've never really wrote. I mean, I've wrote like small scripts, but I've never undertaken something to this scale before.
And how do you think, in your head, as you see it finished, how do you think it will be received by the ordinary housefrau in Brown County?
I think it will be received well.
Yes,
Mm.
yes. Do you feel like this is something that when you get ready to film, you will find pushback from filming locations? Like, are you going to get to go stand on the sidewalk in front of pier to do B-roll?
I don't think I'll get pushed back.
No.
Mm.
That's. I hope not. I hope that everyone is open to everything being out in the light, even if it's just basic.
Not. They won't be, but that's okay.
I love, totally unrelated, but there's a movie called Plan B that was a student film project from I believe a student in Syracuse, and the whole story is based in South Dakota, but none of it was filmed here. And I'm like, yeah, we don't look like that. That's not our main streets. And no, yeah.
Well, mine is filmed entirely in South Dakota. So.
Yeah, I'm like, they tried, but small towns in New York were not like small towns in South Dakota. So, but I did enjoy the film. It's a good one. What do you think your, setting aside politics, if somebody asked you, let's say, to make a film about South Dakota, what is something else about here that you would say, I think that could be written and filmed and the mass produced, and the public would be like just eating it up? What is something else about South Dakota that you think needs more of a light shined on it? I hope it's something positive, but even if it's something negative.
I don't know. Maybe a film about Deadwood or a film about Sanford.
Yeah. I would like to see somebody cover the evolution of the Big Sioux River from time primordial until where it is now. And I hope somebody would catch a scene of all of our elected officials drinking a glass of water right out of the river. Because then for sure some major medical facility would be involved afterwards. I would like to see somebody cover that in a just in a factual documentary way of, here's our river now. Like, this is what we did to it, and whether or not it can be undone. I don't know. They cleaned up the water around Chernobyl. I feel like we could clean up the water here, but we haven't yet. As far as amazing, beautiful things, I think I really would love to see somebody travel to some of our small towns, and there are people living amazing, beautiful, tiny lives. And I think that that's dying out because the positives of it aren't getting out there.
Yeah.
So there's definitely, it's hard to say it's positive when we've spent a winter where there were people that couldn't leave their house for 15 days.
Yeah, that was a rough winter.
That is a rough winter. Yeah.
That was my first true South Dakota winter, I guess, because I've never seen anything like that.
I would say in my lifetime here, we've seen things like it, but not for as many consecutive days. Where we've seen where we might get a couple breaks or whatever. I mean, I've never in my life in South Dakota and in Sioux Falls lived to where we are 2 months into the storm and there are still streets in the city of Sioux Falls that have never been cleared of snow. because we can't get to it. Like,
Mm.
never have I had such a consecutive winter of impairment. And I cannot imagine what that's like for, I mean, what we saw in Pine Ridge and things like that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine just being like, we've got no choice. That sounds like so far back in the history of living on the prairie.
Mm.
Just outlandish. We did have a major ice storm hit Sioux Falls where we were shut down as a city for a couple of weeks due to
Mm.
ice several years ago. But even that was different. Like, you could kind of get out and do things. You
Mm.
weren't, the snow wasn't covering your house, you know. That was very strange. How did uh how did that impact your school? How much school have you lost this winter due to snow days?
We actually didn't really have. I can't remember having any snow days, but because because it was during our finals week, so those classes got pushed online, some of them, but
Okay.
for the finals. But
Yeah, at the
that
college level, you guys kind of all were just getting out right
yes,
before it was trapping
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was another culture shock because in Salt Lake City they have just fleets of snow plows, and so like the streets are always, very taken care of there, and so that was another culture shock coming here. Is just that nobody plows the streets.
Yeah. Well, heck, why? It's all hilly and curvy. Just sled to the bottom and just
Yeah,
hope you didn't forget anything at the top.
just get your sled dogs and
Yep. That's why we have buffalo. They pull very well. That's a lie, folks. Do not pet the fluffy cows. Do not watch any of this and then go out thinking we use buffalo for snow removal. That would be foolish. So, have you had anybody from home come and visit you and stay here and be total tourist and you're like, "Oh, you're embarrassing me."
No, not quite. So my dad came for like a day to like drop off the vehicle that I was using, but yeah, it's just too far, and the
Pandemic
because
hit
of the
right after
regional
you got
airport
here. Yeah.
in Rapid, it's just too much money it's too far to drive, and it's like too expensive to fly to the regional
Right.
airport.
I have never flown on a plane. I
Mm.
am very soon. I'm going to Vegas and I will have to take a plane to do that. And I've just never had, I'm very much one of those Midwesterners that's like 15 hours, we'll drive it. There, I've just never had a reason to fly. I'm not afraid to fly or anything. I've just never had to go anywhere so pertinently that I needed a plane. Um, but that would be a movie if I suddenly did. Uh, so yeah, but I do know from my friends that do for work or entertainment or vacations or whatever that like to travel, they do say that we have created ourselves to be extremely landlocked here.
Mhm.
That flying in is not, that we have nice airports to come into and leave from, that they're real laid back, but it costs so much money.
Yeah.
Or you end up connecting all over the country and flying to Dallas to get to Florida or something weird. So nothing is streamlined out of here.
Mhm.
I don't know how or where South Dakota took such a turn that we have no that's the reoccurring theme today. We have no types of public transportation, not even by air really.
Mhm.
We're just sort of trapped down here. How have we been promoting ourselves as a tourist state all this time? This has been very eye-opening for me. How are we
Mhm.
telling people to even get here? Certainly not by bus or plane.
Take the buffalo.
Take the buffalo. Yeah. At the Minnesota border, you exchange. That you fly into Minneapolis and they pick you up with the buffalo. Yeah. What's your favorite tourist trap type? I mean, because West River, there's a lot more than there are here. In Sioux Falls, our tourist trap is the mall. But what's your favorite tourist thing that you've gone to and been like, this is it. This is exactly what I thought it would be.
I really like Deadwood. That's where I went for my 21st birthday. So
I love Deadwood too. Have you got to experience Dead Weird at Halloween?
Nope.
Oh, put that on your list. That's nice. But I do, yeah. Deadwood is still Deadwood.
It is.
It's, yeah, short of. I can't believe that of all the conservative things that like prostitution was legal there until I think I was born before it was illegal in Deadwood. It was like into the very late 70s. So at one time we were pro sex work, I guess, in Deadwood. I don't know. What do you think? How often do you go back and forth to Pier during times like now, like session?
This session I have not been up there very much because I'm currently a RA at my school. So that's kind of taking up a lot of my time, but I hope like next session to be up there a lot more.
Yeah. So you plan on sticking it out in South Dakota at least until what's if you had to put an end date on South Dakota right now, how long are you committed to us for the moment?
At least till my husband graduates school because he just got out of the Air Force, so he's using his GI Bill to go to school.
Okay, so yeah, so you're committed for enough time to be a difference, make a difference. Do you think you'll change colors?
No.
No. Tell me why not? What do we for real? Like I don't think I would ever. But like I said, I've been told in other states I would be a dyed-in-the-wool Republican, like for what my personal beliefs are. But there are things that I'm just shocked by that idea. What about? Is it something on a local level or a national level? What makes you say no? This is something I will never toe that party line for the Democrats.
Well, so kind of what happened is basically like my husband, he grew up homeless. And
how are you not a Democrat? What are you doing? Well, how are you not a liberal? Okay, go on.
We'll get there. And he grew up in like majority Black neighborhoods with hearing gunshots going off, and then to have social justice warriors. I've told him the blue hair and the that he has privilege written all over him. And, that he's a cis white male and those kinds of things. And, just not knowing really anything. You can't really know anyone's story just by looking at them.
Is he a political person or is he
Yes.
a politics? He's involved, or is he just like politics happen, or is he a motivated voter, or is he also like deep? Like the way I feel like you're keeping track of where bills are going and things like that. Is he more in line with you that way?
Yeah. We're both precinct committee people.
So how does that, when do you turn it off at night during this year? Or is that just general conversation for you all the way through too?
I don't know. We talk about it a lot, but we're kind of on the same page too. We've talked about it so much that it's also, I don't feel like we do it too much anymore.
Yeah. I have friends that are very like it's 24/7. It's in their head, even if it's just in an off the cuff sort of way. And we are all so on the same side about some issues that sometimes I'm like, you guys, you're preaching to the choir. Can we talk about cake versus pie or something different? Because sometimes I feel very much like it's preaching to the choir, and it's like I know we're all following this, but now I need a break from it. What do you guys do for your break from stuff like that? What do you guys? So he must not have grown up here.
No, we were both from Utah. He kind of lived all over the place. With his dad being a drug addict, so they kept him on the road a lot.
And then both of you did you meet in Utah, or did you?
Yeah, we met in Utah.
I was gonna say that would be random if you met in South Dakota and you're like, oh yeah, we're both from Utah. So when you coming here, what have you two found that you're like, we love to go do this together? That South Dakota.
Yeah, we've just gotten into mountain biking. There was a mountain bike shortage during the pandemic, but we finally got our mountain bikes, and so we were doing that last summer. So hopefully get to do some more mountain biking this summer, explore more of South Dakota.
Have you I don't know, you're not really quite in the climbing zone with spearfish, but have you looked into like trail hiking, climbing, anything like that?
Yeah, we've done trails and stuff, hiking. We haven't done any climbing.
So does it feel like you're in a mountainous area that is reminiscent of home, or does it feel like we're a step, we're not quite as big as your mountains?
Definitely not quite as big as the mountains. In Utah, it's like we give directions based on go towards the mountains. But
Yeah.
if you weren't from Utah, you're like, but there's mountains all around us. Well, where is towards?
Yeah.
We're talking about a specific mountain,
Right.
the Wasatch. But so yeah.
So that's got to be nice to have at least a, because if you were on this side of the state, you would be lonely for it.
Yeah.
Like I can almost see to your house if I look west of my place. Like you're where the mountains start for us. So yeah, you would be lonely for it, I think. Just like even when I go west to spend times with friends, I'm like, I am such a prairie girl, and I'm like, you can't see for miles. Like, why do you have these rocks in the way? So you would be the opposite. You would just be like, how do you guys how do you guys know where to tell people what to go
Yeah.
towards? Have you been to Wall Drug?
I have, yeah. I've driven through it. I've never actually
Gone in?
yeah, gone in and done the tourist trap there, but
Yeah, yeah. I do love my Wall Drug. I like Wall Drug. When you go to Pier and you're in you're right on the river there, and the river is such a big part of life in that part of our state, and loyalty to the river and all of our waterways here, except for the Big Sioux River that we don't take good enough care of. Um, do you have anything like that that's similar in Utah, or is that totally a new experience for you?
I would say the river is a new experience where that's kind of because for us it's like the mountains were the center of the cultural kind of world there, and here the river is kind of the cult center of that world.
It is. We all, it doesn't seem to matter what part of the state you live in. We all talk about where you are in relation
Mm-hmm.
to the river.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it doesn't play a role in a lot of our lives, but the rivers throughout the state, even the smaller ones, everybody has a fishing pole in their car.
Yeah.
So that's that. What so you're that kind of leads me back to the things that when I talk about that, I think all South Dakotans are more the same than we are different. When you talk about the blue hairs and being like, you could never, I don't think I would quite be the blue hair that you're describing, although I know some of them. What are some things about the more liberal side of the table that you're drawn to, or that you also believe in or follow?
Yeah, like protecting the natural environment, protecting the Black Hills, protecting the waterways. Those are all really important to me. Stamping out corruption and big business and
And in any level of, I don't think corruption should be acceptable for any of us,
yeah.
regardless of what side it is. How about South Dakota's been heavily divided on a lot of women's health and children's health issues this year.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you've ever seen so dramatic? Or I feel like the little bit I know about, like you said, like the Mormon influence in Utah, I feel like that stuff would never even get to the forefront the way it has here on the state level.
Could you rephrase that?
Well, I feel like a lot of it would be, I feel like the major state level political issues in somewhere like Utah would be almost more business driven and less. I feel like you guys have had a lot longer standard of where we keep the women and children is already decided. Whereas
I would say that.
Yeah, and it's more just like leveled off that way. Whereas I feel like in the last few years here, some of our political people are like, they think that there's an uprising of women and children, and they need to put us back in our place. That's what I feel like is going on. Do you feel like how heavily things like trans rights and abortion and all that are playing in the South Dakota political field this year? Are you startled by that? don't you feel like do you feel like that stuff should be to the forefront, or are those issues that like that's not even real politics?
Well, I do care about like fairness in women's sports, but I'm also concerned about the pedophilia in the South Dakota GOP. And then also another factor to the whole abortion debate is you can't just say, okay, we're going to make, you can't have an abortion, but, you're on your own, mothers.
Right. Which, I don't know, in South Dakota, even if you don't ever consider an abortion, mothers are pretty much on their own here. That's been the way for a long time. That's kind of something that I think is funny, is I'm like, everybody is like, oh, all of a sudden we think that everybody's been aborting their babies and now we're going to stop abortion. But yes, mothers, we'll talk about taking care of you. None of our state has never been concerned with daycare or healthcare or housing for mothers. Never. It's not even normal that we're discussing it publicly lately here. It's almost laughable. And even in a lot of rural areas, there are a lot of women that are like, what? They'd never have done anything we are not a state that, and not on either side of the table, the Democrats have not tried for us either. We are not a state that ever took care of children. We've never done a good job.
Obviously.
Yes. We have parents and people that on the individual level are doing a good job. But as far as our state providing resources to help you do a good job, never. No. Children have never been a political issue here until now. And I feel like they're using all of this stuff about trans healthcare and things like that as a big distraction. If they focus us all on this for this year, they can stay corrupt for another 4. If all you're worried about is whether or not somebody wore a pants or a skirt to school, then you won't notice that we only had one option for how many different seats, So I feel like that's definitely they're wagging the dog with that stuff. But it's out there now and we all have to deal with it. Do you think when you talk to other people that live in the same area as you, because where you are is much more Republican to the forefront than Sioux Falls, we're kind of a blue dot in the rest of the state. But do you feel like there are things that people there are talking about, saying, well, why aren't they also talking about this? Do you feel like that your neighbors in your area and other students maybe that you go to school with, that are they surprised there isn't some issue that's being pushed to the forefront?
I'm not really too sure. Spearfish is kind of a bit of a blue dot as well, being a campus town. And it's, a 64% female student body, and then in like primarily caretaking majors. So there's not a whole lot of political energy, I guess.
People are kind of focused on getting through their stuff and getting through. Yeah. I think that's a norm statewide, is most of us are focused on getting through our life, and right now shoveling for 29 days straight, things like that. We don't all have time to go in and use the sauna at the mansion. No. I'm less bitter about the TV studio than I am about the sauna, but that's because it's really cold out. But yeah, I think I wonder, I'm surprised that there hasn't been more talk about things related to the different pipelines and stuff like that. I mean, I feel like that's something that just all of a sudden now we're going to talk about whether or not trans kids can talk to their doctor. We're not worried about, which affects a tiny part of the population. And no matter what they choose to do, it doesn't really affect the rest of the population, but the pipelines kind of matter.
Especially when, Christine is concerned about China taking over, our farmland, and then
exactly
we are taking away farmland.
Like,
build a
great.
pipeline.
I think we might need to talk about that. Yeah,
Mm.
things like that. I'm like, where did all of a sudden now that's not a big deal.
Mm.
And it's just like, yeah, it kind of still is. But I feel like there's been a lot of that. And I wonder, maybe in other states, things like that happen too. Maybe that's how we all get so complacent in just electing the same people over and over again. Um, is that the norm? Like I have commented on how John Thune has now been in office longer than a lot of people that could have voted for him twice
Mm.
have been alive. Like he is not in touch with a lot of people that voted him into office the first time are dead because they were old, and a lot of people that have really not had a choice but to vote for him in the last couple of rounds were not even born when he started this.
Mm.
So was that your experience growing up in Utah? Is there a lot of long-standing political names that they're just there and that's what they do for us?
Yeah, that's basically Mitt Romney.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you as a young and politically motivated person, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think the Mormons, like I said before, they just have their kind of own agenda, and I think that he's just part of those prominent Mormon families, and everyone in Utah is kind of related in some way, and there's just a lot of like nepotism
Name
and
recognition. I think there's a lot of, if somebody moved into the state, who else would they vote for? They've never heard any of these other
yeah.
names. Yeah, I think that's unfortunate.
Mm.
I don't like the idea of, I do follow the belief that because there's no term limit for the people in the lobby,
Mm.
that we do have to have a continuous memory holder as far as some of the political offices. But boy, we just got a lot of old white guys. You want to talk about cis privilege, and we got a lot of old white guys, a lot of old white guys, and we've got, there's been a little bit of chatter about if your governor's a millionaire, um, there's something. If your governor's a millionaire and claiming they did it on a farm,
Mm.
yeah, let's talk about that. We've got a lot of disparity as far as income in our state. We have extreme wealth and extreme poverty, and there's only a handful of us in the middle, and the ones in the middle, our neck is getting sore from knowing which direction to look.
Mm.
So I hope more young motivated people like you stay motivated. Fire some kids up, but don't discount being a blue hair. It could come with time.
Yeah.
I feel like you would definitely be purple in this state. Yeah. What do you as a sign off, what do you think the next 5 days in South Dakota, what's the best thing that's going to happen in your eyes?
Well, there's the very interesting drama happening with Julie Freimuller being stripped of her committee assignments, being investigated. But they weren't going to investigate Tim Goodwin at all. So
yeah, but honestly, the Freimuller thing at any level of employment, if you can't be talking about boobs with people. You can't be telling another female coworker what to do with her breasts, whether it has to do with feeding a baby or flashing them on the floor. I really think that whatever was said was enough to be like, oh man, this is HR 101.
Mm.
And so I kind of get a kick out of that. I'm like, that's of all things for them to decide that now we get cranky about her bizarre beliefs about vaccination and breastfeeding. Now that we've talked about boobs, we're going to get somebody in trouble. That's why we need better women in politics.
Silence whenever Joel Koskin's raping his foster daughter.
Yes, and that his other children are still in that house.
Mm.
And yeah, and I would say, I used to think, how could you, if something like that happened in your house, how as you as the spouse could not know? And now, as I look at what we're seeing over on the east side of the state, I realize that the internet, you can do a lot of things and hide. You actually could hide your downloads and things like that. Your spouse might not know that that's going on. But what we know from Joel Koskind is extended family knew and his wife knew. And I feel like there's got to be some accomplice to that. I feel like,
yeah, she was definitely accomplice.
Yeah, I feel like
there's a co-offender.
Yes, some prosecution needs to be laid on multiple people. And I do feel for the victim as well, who's probably just like, I'd really like to get on with my life and not be a part of this anymore. And probably at the same time also is like, the more we talk about it, the harder it probably is for siblings. Why has nobody went and got those kids? Why has nobody went and got those kids and done anything? Why do they still have the other children and unfettered access to groom the next generation? Yeah, it's a bad taste. It's a bad taste in your mouth. I hope someday maybe you get to do a movie about all of us rising up over all that.
Yeah.
I hope
so too.
I hope it doesn't just end with, and we left it that way.
Yeah.
I hate books that end that way. I hate movies that end that way, where they're like, so that's what we did. Yeah.
Hopefully we get a happy ending.
Yes. All right. Well, I promised I would only keep you for an hour, so I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much. I think you're the first overtly Republican I've interviewed for this project.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, and now I'm even more convinced that that maybe there are different overtly Republican, overtly Republican, openly Republican people that aren't that different from a lot of our Democratic people. I think we're all a lot more the same. We all want to live good lives and not have so much of the bad things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it. There's a lot of bad things.
Yes, yes. And not just in South Dakota, in other places. But unfortunately, in South Dakota, with our wide spaces, you can hide a lot on the prairie. It gets real dark here. And when you can't see the next light for many, many miles, you can hide a lot on the prairie.
Yeah.
So, but you can also grow good things. So I hope you stay a long time and grow good things.
Well, thank you. I hope so too.
All right. I'm gonna sign off here. Oh, I know all of you that are watching are shocked. I honestly did not realize that we would be talking so much politics today, because I've always said that I want to learn more about the day-to-day. But if somebody is full-time involved and motivated to be politically involved, I think that's great. And that is your day-to-day. So I love to hear somebody who's probably got a lot of views that different from mine, but it seems like on a lot of the core issues, our views are the same. And that is kind of a little bit of do unto others. We don't have enough do unto others as you would to yourself in Pierre these days. So I hope you're all staying warm. If you want to talk to me for 605 Speaks, I still have a lot of counties I've got to hit. Email me at 605speaks@gmail.com. Watch us on the YouTube, subscribe, and hit the notifications. If you just like watching my cats, who are really involved today, you can certainly always catch them. I am, for real, booked for a lot of gigs coming up in this spring and summer and into the fall. So I'm going to have a lot of cool people involved with those coming on. And also, I'm going to have somebody come back. I talked about going to Las Vegas. One of my first interviews, an artist from Rapid City, she is now taken her art kind of all across the country, and I'm going to try and get her back on and talk about her Las Vegas exhibit. I'm really excited about that. So everybody stay warm, wear your sweaters, be good, and keep an eye on Pierre over the next few weeks, right? Bye.